samsara dava nalavidaloka ganaya karanya ganaganatvam praptasya kalyana gunanavasya Vande Guru Shri Sharanaravinda Mahaprabhu Kirtan Nitya Gita Vaditya Madhyan Manasura Sena Romancha Kampa Shutaranga Bhajo Vande Guru Shri Charanarvindam Shri Vigrahara Dhananitya Nana Shingaratan Mandira Majanado Yuktasya Bhaktam Shaniyunjatopi Vande Guru Shri Charanarvindam Chaturvedashi Bhagavat Prasada Swadhana Triptan Haribhakta Sangan Kritaiva Triptim Bhajata Sadaiva Vande Guru Shri Charanarvindam 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 Shri Radhika Madhavayora Para Madhurya Lila Guna Rupa Namnam Pratikshana Swadhana Lalupasya Vande Guru Shri Charanarvindam Nikunjayuna Ratikeli Siddhyai Yayali Biyukti Apikshaniya Tatrati Daksha Dati Valabhasya Vande Guru Shri Charanarvindam Sakshadarit Vena Samasta Shastir Uktastata Bhavyata Eva Sadvi Kintu Prabhurya Prayeva Tasya Vande Guru Shri Charanarvindam Yasya prasada bhagavat prasado Yasya prasada nagati kutopi Nayam subham stasya yasyastra sandhyam Vande guru shri sharanarvindam Vande Guru Shri Sharanarvindam Vande Guru Shri Sharanarvindam Nama Om Vishnupadaya Krishna Pristaya Bhutale Srimati Bhakti Vedanta Swami Niti Namine Namaste Saraswate Deve Gauravani Pracharine Nirvishesha Shunyavadi Vasya Chadeshatarine Jaya Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Shivasari Gaur Bhaktavinda Jaya Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Shivasari Gaur Bhaktavinda Jaya Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Shivasari Gaur Bhaktavinda Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Jaya Yada Nila Madharada, Nila Madharade. Jaya Yada Nila Madharada, Nila Madharade. Jaya Jagannatha, Jaya Jagannatha, Jaya Baladeva, Jaya Subhaja. Jaya Sitaram, Jaya Sitaram, Jaya Sitaram, Jaya Lakshman Hanuman. Jaya Goranita, Jaya Goranita, Jaya Goranita, Jaya Goranita. Nitya Haribo, 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 Nitya Haribo.
दक्षः शीलटङ्कानकालये इतो नरसिंहा परतो नरसिंहा यतो यामि ततो नरसिंहा बाहिर्नरसिंहा हृदये नरसिंहा नरसिंहमदिं शरणं प्रपद्ये तव करकमलवरे नाका अद्भुतशृङ्गां दलिता हिरण्यकशिपु तनभृङ्गां केशवधृता नरहरिरूपा जय जगदीश हरे जय जगदीश हरे जय जगदीश हरे केशवधृता नरहरिरूपा जय जगदीश हरे जय जगदीश हरे जय जगदीश हरे जय जगदीश हरे जय नरसिंहदेव जय नरसिंहदेव जय नरसिंहदेव जय नरसिंहदेव जय प्रहलाद महाराज जय प्रहलाद महाराज जय प्रहलाद महाराज जय भक्त प्रहलाद जय जय प्रभुपाद 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 जय जय प्रभुपाद जय जय गुरुदेव 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 जय जय गुरुदेव नरसिंहदेव भगवान की
कृष्ण प्रेयसी नमो नमः। तुलसी कृष्ण प्रेयसी नमो नमः। राधा कृष्ण सेवा पाबो हे अभिलाषी। राधा कृष्ण सेवा पाबो हे अभिलाषी। जे तोमार शरण लोय तारा वंश पूर्ण होय। कृपा कोरी कोरो तारे वृंदावन वासी। मोर ये अभिलाष विलास कुंज दियो वास। नयने हरिबो सदा युगल रूप राशि। हे निवेदन धर सखीरनुगत कोरो। सेवाधिकार दिए कोरो निज दासी। दीन कृष्ण दास को ये नमो रहोय। श्री राधा गोविंद प्रेमे सदा येन भासी। श्री राधा गोविंद प्रेमे सदा येन भासी। यानि कानि च पापानि ब्रह्महत्यादिकानि च तानि तानि प्रणश्यन्ति प्रदक्षिण पदे पदे। यानि कानि च पापानि ब्रह्महत्यादिकानि च तानि तानि प्रणश्यन्ति प्रदक्षिणपदे पदे यानि कानि च पापानि ब्रह्महत्यादिकानि च तानि तानि प्रणश्यन्ति प्रदक्षिणपदे पदे Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Jaya Vrinda Devi, Jaya Vrinda Devi, Vrinda Devi, Jaya Vrinda Devi. Jaya Tulsi Maharani, Jaya Tulsi Maharani, Jaya Tulsi Maharani, Jaya Tulsi Maharani. Nitai Gaur Hari Bol, Hari Bol, Hari Bol, Nitai Gaur Hari Bol. Jaya Jaya Prabhupada, 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 Jaya Jaya Prabhupada. Jaya Jaya Gurudev, 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 Jaya Jaya Gurudev. Vrindayai Tulasi Devyai Priyayai Keshavasya Cha Krishna Bhakti Prade Devi Satyavatyai Namo Namaha. Vrindayai Tulasi Devyai Priyayai Keshavasya Cha Vishnu Bhakti Prade Devi Satyavatyai Namo Namaha. Vrindayai Tulasi Devyai Priyayai Keshavasya Cha Vishnu Bhakti Prade Devi Satyavatyai Namo Namaha.
Thus, Lily, my Vishnu, showers behold the beautiful path of Radha and Krishna.
I beg you to make me a follower of the Karha dance of the Vraja. Please give me the privileged devotional service and make me your own maid servant. This very fallen and lowly servant of Krishna prays. May I always swim in the love, Shishirada and Govinda. Shri Chaitanya Shikshastakam Ki Jai. There are 10 offenses in the matter of chanting holy name that should be avoided, and they are as follows. 1. To blaspheme devotees who have dedicated their lives to propagation of holy name of the Lord. 2. To consider the name of the demigods that allow Shiva or Brahma to be equal to independent name Lord Vishnu. 3. To disobey the order of spiritual master. 4. To blaspheme the Veda literature or the literature pursuant the Vedic version. 5. To consider the glory of the chanting Hare Krishna to be imagination. 6. To give some interpretation to holy name of the Lord. 7. To commit sinful activities on strength of chanting holy name of the Lord. 8. To consider chanting Hare Krishna one of the auspicious ritualistic activities offering the Vedas as fruited activities, Karma Kanda. 9. To instruct a faithless person about the glory of holy name. 10. To not complete faith in chanting holy names, and to maintain material attachments in understanding so many instructions on this matter. It is also an offense to be inattentive while chanting. Every devotee who claims to be Vaishnava must carefully guard against these 10 offenses. In order to quickly achieve desired success, Krishna Prema. Now let us offer most humble obeisances unto all the Vaishnava devotees of the Lord. They are just as light trees who can fulfill to everyone, and they are full of compassion, fallen conditions. Shri Chaitanya Shikshastakam Ki Jai. Cheto Darpanamarjanam Pavamahadavagni Nirvapanam Shriya Gairavachantrika Vitaranam Vidyavatu Jivanam Anandam Buddhivardhanam Pratipadam Purnamita Sadhanam Sarvatma Snapanam Param Vijayate Shri Krishna Sankirtanam Nam Namakari Bahuta Nija Sarva Shaktis Tatra Pita Niyamita Smarani Nakalaha Etadishi Tavakripa Bhagavam Mamapi Durdaivami Disham Iha Janina Nurakaha Trina Tapi Sunichena Tarorapi Sashnuna Amanina Manadena Kirtanya Sada Harihi Na Thanam Na Janam Na Sundarim Kavitamba Jagadishakamaye Mama Jammani Jammanishvare Pavata Bhaktir Haituki Tavai Ayinanda Tanuja Kinkaram Patitam Mam Vishame Pavam Buddha Kripaya Tava Pada Pankaja Sthita Duri Satesham Vichintaya Nayanam Galadashru Daraya Vadanam Kadgada Rudaya Gira Pulakai Nichitam Mapur Kada Tava Nama Kahane Pavishati Yuga itam nimishena chakshusha pravisha itam shunya itam jaga sarvam govinda virahe name ashirishava padaratam pinnashtumam adarshanam marmhatam karotuva yatha tathava vidathatu lampato matprananathastu se eva na paraha Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Shri Chaitanya Shikshastakam Ki Jai. Glory to Shri Krishna Sankirtana, which cleanses the heart of all the dust accumulated for years and extinguishes the fire of conditional life, of repeated birth and death. This Sankirtana is plantation for humanity in the Lord, because it spreads the rays and banishing moon. It is the life of all transcendental knowledge. It increases ocean transcendent bliss and enables us to fully taste the nectar for which all with Oh my Lord. Your holy name alone grant all benediction human beings. And thus you have hundreds of millions of names like Krishna and Govinda. In these transcendental names you have vested all your transcendental energies. There are not even hard and fast rules for chanting these names. Oh my Lord, out kindness enables us to easily approach your holy name. But I'm so unfortunate I have no attraction for them. One should chant the holy name of the Lord in humble state of mind, thinking oneself lower than the straw in the street. One should be more tolerant than a tree, devoid of all sense of false prestige, and should be ready to offer all respect to others. In such a state of mind, one can chant the holy name of the Lord constantly. Oh, Almighty Lord, about your causeless devotional service, birth after birth. O Sahamarjananda, I'm your eternal servitor, yet somehow I fall into the ocean of birth and death. Please pick me up from this ocean of death and place me at one's Adam to your lotus feet. O my Lord, my eye protect your tears of love flowing constantly when I chant the holy name, while my voice choke up, while the hairs of my body stand end at the recitation of your name. O Govinda, feeling of separation cause a moment to be like a great flood. Tears are flowing from eyes are torrents of rain, and feeling all vacant in the world in your absence. I know no one but Krishna as my Lord, and shall remain so he handles me roughly by his grace, or makes me broken hearted not being present before me. He is completely free to do anything and everything, for he is always my worshipful Lord unconditionally.
Shri Chaitanya Siksastakam Om Aganya Tirandasya Jnananjana Salakaya Chakshurunmitam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha Shri Chaitanya Manobishtam Sapitam Yena Bhutale Swayam Rupa Kadamayam Dadati Swapadantikam Vandeham Shri Guru Shri Chitapatakamalам Shri Gurun Vaishnavanscha Shri Rupam Sagrajatam Sahagana Raghunatam Vitam Tam Sajivam Sadvaitam Savadutam Parijana Sahitam Krishna Chaitanya Devam Shri Radha Krishna Padam Sahagana Lalita Shri Shakham Vitam Nama Om Vishnu Padaya Krishna Pisthaya Bhutale Shrimate Bhakti Vedanta Swami Iti Namini Namaste Saraswate Deve Gauravani Pracharini Nivishesha Shunyavadi Pachadadesha Tarini Nama Om Vishnu Padaya Krishna Pisthaya Bhutale Shrimate Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Iti Namini Shri Varshabhani Devi Daitaya Kripabdaye Krishna Sambandha Vijnana Daine Prabhave Namaha Madhur Ujjvala Premadya Shri Rupanuga Bhaktita Shri Gaura Karna Shakti Vigrahaya Namostute Namaste Gauravani Shri Murtaye Dinatarine Rupanuga Viruddha Papasiddhanta Dvantaharine Namo Gora Kishoraya Sakshat Vairagya Murtaye Vipralambara Sambodhe Padam Pujayate Namaha Namo Bhakti Vinodaya Sachitanandanamine Gora Shakti Swarupaya Rupanuga Varayate Gora Virbhava Bhumistvam Nirdista Sajjana Priya Vaishnava Savabhoma Sri Jagannataya Te Namaha Vanchakapataravischa Kripa Sindhubhyevacha Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha Namo Mahavadanyaya Krishna Prema Padayate Krishna Krishna Chaitanya Namne Guru Chase Namaha Panchatattvatmakam Krishnam Bhakta Rupa Swarupakam Bhaktavataram Bhaktakyam Namami Bhakta Saktikam Hey Krishna Karuna Sindhu Dinabandhu Gajakpate Gopesha Gopika Kanta Radha Kanta Namostute Jayatam Surator Bangur Mama Manda Matergati Matsarva Swapadam Bojo Radha Madanamo Hanu Divya Drindaranya Kalpratumataha Shimad Ratnagara Simhasanastito Shimad Radha Shila Govinda Devo Prastali Bihi Sevyamana Smarami Shiman Rasara Saram Vivam Sivata Tatastita Karsan Venus Swaner Gopir Gopinata Shri Ishtana Tapta Kanchana Gorandi Radhe Vrindavaneshwari Vishabhanu Stute Devi Pranamami Hari Priye Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Dvaita Gadadhara Srivasadi Gaura Bhaktavinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare Shri Brahmasmiti Ki Jai Ishwara Parama Krishna Sachidananda Vigraha Anade Radhe Govinda Sarvakarana Karanam Chintamani Prakara Satma Sukha Paviksha Laksha Vriteshu Suravira Vipalayantam Lakshmi Sahasra Shata Sambrahma Sevyamanam Govinda Madi Purusham Tamaham Bhajami Venum Kvanantam Aravinda Dalayatacham Parharvatam Samasitam Buddha Sundarangam Kandarpakoti Kamaniya Vishesha Shobham Govinda Madi Purusham Tamaham Bhajami Alola Chandra Kala Savana Madhavamsi Ratnam Gadam Panayake Kalavilasam Shyamam Tribangaladitam Yata Prakasam Govinda Madi Purusham Tamaham Bhajami Angani yasya sakalendriya vrittimanti pasyanti panti karayanti chiram jaganti Ananda chinmaya sadujvala vigrahasya Govinda Amadi Purisham Tamaham Bhajami Advaitam Achyutam Anadim Anantarupam Adhyam Purana Purisham Navayuvanam Cha Vedesa Durlabham Durlabham Atma Bhakto Govinda Amadi Purisham Tamaham Bhajami Pantastakoti Satavatsara Sampragamyo Vayo Ratapi Manaso Muribhungamanam Sobhyastiyat Prapadasimya Vichintya Tattve Govindam Adi Purisham Tamaham Bhajami Ekopya Sora Chaitam Jagadanda Kotim Yaschaktirasti Jagadanda Chayayadanta Andantarasta Paramanu Chayantarastam Govindam Adi Purisham Tamaham Bhajami Yad Bhava Bhavita Dio Manajasta Taiva Samprapya Rupa Mahimasana Yana Bhuta Suktayam Eva Nigama Patitaistuvanti Govindam Adi Purisham Tamaham Bhajami Ananda Chinmaya Rasat Pratibhavitabhis Tabirya Eva Nicharupa Taya Kalobi Goloka Eva Nivasata Kilatma Bhuta Govindam Adi Purisham Tamaham Bhajami Premanjana Churita Bhakti Vilochanena Santaksa Deva Hidesa Vilokayanti Yam Shama Sundaram Achintya Gunaswarupam Govindam Adi Purisham Tamaham Bhajami Ramadi Murti Sukalani
Nanavatara Makarod Bhuvaneshu Kintu
Krishna Swayam Samabhavat Paramam Pumamyo
Govinda
Govindam Adi Purisham Tamaham Bhajami Shibram Samita Ki Jai She Shrimad Bhagavatam Grantaraj Ki Jai Shrimad Bhagavad Gita Grantaraj Ki Jai Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya Nama Om Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prasthaya Bhutale Shrimate Bhakti Vedanta Swami Nitinamani Namaste Saraswati Deve Guruvani Pacharine Nirvisesa Sunyavadi Paskati Satarine Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Srivasadi Gaura Bhaktivinoda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. So we're continuing in the 15th chapter of Bhagavad Gita, and we'll start from text 9. Chapter 15, text 9. Shotram Chaksu Sparsanam Cha Rasanam Granam Evacha Adistaya Manas Chayam Vishayam Upasevyate. So let's see who wants to read. Okay.
The living entity, thus taking another gross body, obtains a certain type of ear, eye, tongue, nose, and sense of touch, which are grouped about the mind. He thus enjoys a particular set of sense objects. In other words, if the living entity adulterates his consciousness with the qualities of cats and dogs, in his next life he gets a cat or dog body and enjoys. Consciousness is originally pure, like water. But if we mix water with a certain color, it changes. Similarly, consciousness is pure, for the spirit soul is pure. But consciousness is changed according to the association of the material qualities. Real consciousness is Krishna consciousness. When therefore one is situated in Krishna consciousness, he is in his pure life. But if his consciousness is adulterated by some type of material mentality, in the next life he gets a corresponding body. He does not necessarily get a human body again. He can get the body of a cat, dog, hog, demigod, or one of many other forms, for there are 8,004,000 species.
This, of course, is not taught in schools. You can only hear this when you come to Bhagavad Gita class. But this is what is actually going on. Why are there so many different bodies? Why are there so many different types of consciousness in the world? Why Does one person believe one way, another person believes another way? It's all due to the influence of the modes of material nature. So, to become free from the modes of material nature is the way to be educated. As long as we're under the influence of the modes of material nature, we will have different beliefs, different concepts, and will not be able to come to Krishna consciousness. But when we are transcendental to the modes of material nature, then we can understand things as they are. And then we understand what our real position is in relationship to matter, in relationship to Krishna, in relationship to other living entities. And then we're no longer in illusion, and we don't suffer due to ignorance. So there's a real interest in being promoted to the mode of goodness, and then from the mode of goodness to transcendental goodness, when we finally can understand what our real situation is in life and how to deal with the material energy without becoming contaminated by it. And ultimately, so this is real knowledge. This is real education. We have to be convinced about that and attain it. Therefore, at initiation, one promises no meat eating, no gambling, no illicit sex, no intoxication. And Prabhupada says over and over again, strictly follow these four regulative principles. And also, chant Hare Krishna, eat only prasadam, hear Bhagavad Gita and Srimad Bhagavatam, and associate with devotees and come to the temple and do service. If we do these things, then we come to the mode of goodness very quickly, maybe even overnight. And if we continue doing these things, then we stay in the mode of goodness, and then we can be eventually elevated to transcendental goodness. At that point, we're liberated from the influence of the modes of material nature. Therefore, we're no longer, let's say, illusioned by different theories. We don't get excited by hearing about, how you can get frozen at death, and then later on to unfreeze you, and you can live forever in this body. It's all nonsense. It's all crazy cheating. But as long as we're under the influence of the modes of material nature, we might believe those crazy things. But when we come to transcendental goodness, then we understand who we are actually. We're the eternal servant of Krishna. We're not members of this ethnicity or that race or this country. We're all the eternal servants of the Lord. So, unless we have this education, and unless we hear this on a regular basis, we will be little by little attracted to the material nonsense and become conditioned again, even after becoming Krishna conscious. So it's only when we make a firm, let's say, determination that I'm going to stay on the straight path of Krishna consciousness and not be fooled anymore by all these false theories. So here we see Prabhupada has given us so much literature. It could take many lifetimes to read all the books he's written. And in these books, he explains this transcendental knowledge. Why? Because we should hear this every day. We should think about it during the day. We should explain these things to others. We should not be afraid to make these explanations because they're all the truth. Now, some people are willing to hear, and many people are not willing to hear. Recently somebody wrote me a letter And then they wanted me to pray for their father who was sick. So I didn't want to say not to do that. So but I wrote back and I said, look, I pray for everybody every day, not just one person, but I pray that everyone become Krishna conscious and practice Krishna consciousness. So, and later on, I got another letter from the same person. And they said, well, my dad's doing a little bit better. Your prayers are working. So then I said, look, prayer is not to ask something from God. A prayer is to glorify God. Because Krishna is in the heart of every living entity. He knows exactly what you need. So you don't have to ask him. He knows better than we do what we need. So we simply have to learn to glorify God. And there's so many wonderful prayers in Bhagavad Gita, Srimad Bhagavatam, the Nectar Devotion, the different scriptures that Prabhupada has written, even in like the Padma Purana and the prayers of the Alvars and so forth. So simply repeating those transcendental prayers, glorifying the Lord, that's a prayer. And so after writing all that, the person answered, he said, well, I'm a little bit selfish myself. You have a higher state of consciousness than I do, but I'm very selfish, so I have to pray for myself. So we see that even though a person hears the truth, that doesn't mean they accept it or that they're going to follow it. They have to be ready to accept the truth. And that's a big step for many people. So, but we shouldn't be intimidated to water it down. But on the other hand, we should explain things in such a way that hopefully makes sense to people. Okay, so let's go to the next verse. Utkramanantam stitam vani bunjanam va gunanvitam vimuta nana pasyanti jnana chaksusaha. Go ahead.
The foolish cannot understand how a living entity can quit his body, nor can they understand what sort of body he enjoys under the spell of the modes of nature. But one whose eyes are trained in knowledge can see all this.
Now, again, just like in the 13th chapter, here's a verse that's teaching us how to see properly. That is real philosophy. So it says, but one whose eyes are trained in knowledge can see all this. So this eyes are trained in knowledge, that means pasyanti jnana chaksusaha. And go ahead, read the purport.
The word jnana chakshusa is very significant.
Jnana chaksusa.
Jnana
Chaksusa.
chakshusa is very significant. Without knowledge, one cannot understand how a living entity leaves his present body, nor what form of body he is going to take in the next life, nor even why he is living in a particular type of body. This requires a great amount of knowledge, understood from Bhagavad Gita and similar literatures, heard from a bona fide spiritual master.
Okay, you see, a great amount of knowledge understood from Bhagavad Gita and similar literatures, meaning like Srimad Bhagavatam, Nectar of Devotion, Nectar of Instruction, Krishna book, etc. And heard from a bona fide spiritual master. That's the way to have knowledge, not hear from some makeshift wannabe who thinks they're a teacher and talks nonsense all the time. Go ahead.
One who is trained to perceive all these things is fortunate. Every living entity is quitting his body under certain circumstances. He is living under certain circumstances. He is enjoying under certain circumstances under the spell of material nature. As a result, he is suffering different kinds of happiness and distress under the illusion of sense enjoyment. Persons who are everlastingly
Okay,
full.
that's a very prominent phrase. Under the illusion of sense enjoyment. Basically, that's what this person answered me. They said, "Well, you're they were talking about me and said you're very you're not self-interested. You're praying for everyone, but I have a self-interest. I'm praying for myself or for my dad." Right? So that look what it says here. It says. So, as a result, he is suffering different kinds of happiness and distress under the illusion of sense enjoyment. So, yeah, when we get attached to sense enjoyment, sometimes we have some temporary enjoyment, and most of the times we have a lot of suffering. Although our purpose is sense enjoyment, and it says under the illusion of sense enjoyment. Why does it say under the illusion of sense enjoyment? Because Hishikena, Hishikesha, Sevanam Bhakti Uchite. The senses belong to Krishna. The body belongs to Krishna. The body is made of earth, water, fire, air, ether, mind, intelligence, false ego. Those are Krishna's inferior material qualities, inferior spiritual qualities. So the body belongs to Krishna. The sense gratification belongs to Krishna. But we're trying to usurp it. That's a good word. Look that word up, usurp. We're trying to usurp, we're trying to steal it from Krishna. And because of that, we get into trouble. If our senses belong to Krishna, then how should we use them? We should use them in the service of Krishna. So again, we get into this concept of proprietorship, and we've spoken about this before. So what does it say? Usurp.
A person who takes a position of power or importance illegally or by force.
Yeah, that's it. How do you spell it?
U-S-U-R-P-E-R.
Okay, very good. U-S-U-R-P-E-R. So, if we act as if the senses belong to us, and we act only for our own sense gratification, we are usurping what belongs to Krishna. In other words, we become a thief. Now, what happens to thieves? They get punished for breaking the laws. You see? This is explained in the Bhagavad Gita also, where it says, let me see if I can find it real quick. Let's see. Okay, I have to find it later. Anyway, a person who uses senses for sense gratification, but not to please Krishna, they become punished. Why? Because they're a thief. So, what is the solution? It's to understand what belongs to us and what doesn't belong to us. That's what we're learning by reading Bhagavad Gita. We're learning what belongs to us and what doesn't belong to us. So, the senses don't belong to us. Senses have been given to us to use. Now, we can use them for sense gratification. But what will happen? We'll be punished. Now, is that fair? Oh, well, some people say it's not fair. Why is God doing this? But on the other hand, it is fair because if we properly use the senses, we go back to Godhead. If we improperly use them, we stay in the cycle of birth and death. That's what's not fair, staying in the cycle of birth and death. And that's personal choice that we make. So let's see, in the 3rd chapter, verse number 16, it says, "My dear Arjuna, one who does not follow in human life the cycle of sacrifice, thus established by the Vedas, certainly leads a life full of sin. Living only for the satisfaction of senses, such a person lives in vain." V-A-I-N, vain, you can look that word up. In other words, it means like useless. What's it say?
Having or showing an excessively high opinion of one's appearance, abilities, or worth. 2. Producing no result.
Yeah,
Useless.
that's the point. Producing no result. Yeah. Okay. So, my dear Arjuna, this is the 3rd chapter, 16th verse. One who does not follow in human life the cycle of sacrifice, thus established by the Vedas, certainly leads a life full of sin. Living only for the satisfaction of senses, such a person lives in vain. Okay, let's read that purport.
The Mamonist philosophy of work very hard and enjoy sense gratification.
So that's the Mamonist philosophy. Mammonist, it's a word from the Bible. It means someone who just is selfish and just works for their own interest. And they work real hard and then they spend all their time in sense gratification. Go ahead. Restart from the beginning. The Mammonist?
The Mammonist philosophy of work very hard and enjoy sense gratification is condemned herein by the Lord. Therefore, by those who want to enjoy Therefore, for those who want to enjoy this material world, the above mentioned cycle of performing yajnas is absolutely necessary. One who does not follow such regulations is living a very risky life, being condemned more and more. By nature's law, this human form of life is specifically meant for self-realization in either of the 3 ways, namely karma yoga, jnana yoga, or bhakti yoga. There is no necessity of rigidly following the performances of prescribed yajnas for the transcendentalists who are above vice and virtue. But those who are engaged in sense gratification require purification by the above-mentioned cycle of yajna performances. There are different kinds of...
Now, see, what's very interesting there, you don't mention Ashtanga Yoga. It says Karma Yoga, Jnana Yoga, or Bhakti Yoga. Why does he not mention Ashtanga Yoga? Well, what is Ashtanga Yoga? It is yogis who do tremendous austerities to develop the cities. That's materialistic life. And how do we know it's materialistic? Because the scientists have emulated some of the cities by technology. Flying through the air, going on the water without sinking, right? What's that? Here, put that over there. Put that over there. So all those are cities. They're magical things. Walking on water. Well, we have a boat. It's going on the water. And flying through the air. Well, we have an airplane that flies through the air. And than going underwater. Well, we have submarines that go underwater. So they have emulated, maybe not all the cities, but a bunch of them by technology. But those cities are materialistic goals. They're not actually spiritual. Although some people say, no, it's spiritual. Look, Vishwamrita Muni created an alternate universe. Yeah, but look what happened. Why did he do it? So he wanted to put a Sudra on the heavenly planet, so he had the power how to create an alternate universe. That has nothing to do with serving Krishna or going back to Godhead, you see. So that's why they don't mention Astanga Yoga, because it's basically very materialistic. Now, Karma Yoga for elevation to higher planets is materialistic also. Jnana Yoga to achieve merging into the Brahma Jyoti, it is spiritual, because you want to at least go to the Brahma Jyoti, which is spiritual. But then someone will fall down because they have incomplete knowledge. But the cities trying to develop these astronomical powers, that it's actually materialistic. There's nothing spiritual about it. Okay, go ahead.
There are different kinds of activities. Those who are not Krishna conscious are certainly engaged in sensory consciousness. Therefore, they need to execute pious work. The yajna system is planned in such a way that sensory conscious persons may satisfy their desires without becoming entangled in the reaction of sense gratificatory work.
Okay, sense gratificatory work, not gratification.
Sense gratificatory work.
Okay, now that's a very significant statement. Why? Read that again. Go ahead.
The yajna system, the prosperity of the world. The yajna system is planned in such a way that sensory conscious persons may satisfy their desires without becoming entangled in the reaction of sense gratificatory work.
Okay, see, that's a very significant statement. If we have a proper brahmana who helps us engage in what you would call yagyas, but in order to please Krishna, not to please ourselves, then we become purified. The yajna system is planned in such a way that sensory conscious persons, so people who want to use their senses for sense gratification. So when the yajna system is planned properly, one can satisfy their material desires without becoming entangled in the reactions of sense gratificatory work. Whoa, it's a big statement. In other words, Krishna will give you the opportunity, when you have a proper brahmana, to satisfy some of your material desires without becoming entangled by the reactions to sense gratificatory work. Now, can you think of an example like that might have happened to you? Anybody? You see, we have to think very carefully about all these statements Prabhupada. Prabhupada is choosing every word very carefully. Okay. So yeah, I remember praying that we could build this temple. Right. Not so I could live in it, but so we would have a nice temple to worship Radha and Krishna, because Radha and Krishna had a very, very, let's say, bumpy road for years. Being in somebody's garage and then being in somebody's cellar. It was like horrible. That went on for years. So, and then eventually being in the little house that we had here. So I was always praying that we'd be able to build a nice temple. And it happened. So, was that a sense gratificatory thing for me? Well, in a sense, you know, the idea of having a big temple and being able to maintain it and have very opulent worship, you know, there's certain like pride that goes with it, or a sense of achievement that goes with it. So Krishna was able to give us such a wonderful result and not become entangled in the reactions of sense gratificatory work. So that means that once we actually achieved this temple, we didn't use it for our own sense gratification. We used it to help others become Krishna conscious. So that's, I'm giving one example. There are other types of examples you can give. Like, for example, someone that might pray to Krishna, please let my father get better, and I will, you know, promise to do this and that. So, you know, our material desires sometimes are satisfied by Krishna, and in the same time, we do not get karmic reactions because we become purified of the desire for more sense gratification. In other words, we got certain things that we wanted, but at the same time, we became sober and did not want anything like that again. And therefore, what happens? That we may satisfy the desires without becoming entangled in the reaction of sense gratificatory work. Okay, so go ahead, read some more.
The prosperity of the world depends not on our own efforts, but on the background arrangement of the Supreme Lord, directly carried out by the demigods. Therefore,
okay, you see there's this relationship between Krishna and the demigods. This was the higher the higher technology that people had in Bharat. And that's why they were so wealthy and happy and peaceful. So when you satisfy Krishna, Krishna will order the demigods to make things easy for you. And then you have plenty of time for Krishna consciousness. You're not harried. Look that word up, harried. Harried. It's interesting. What does it say?
feeling strained as a result
There
of
you-
having demands persistently made on one.
Yes, you're not harried. It has nothing to do with harry. It means harried, right? So it's a good word. You're not strained anymore, right? Just like someone like Elon Musk. He's very strained right now because of Twitter, right? And, he's always complaining, this thing, that thing, and he's trying this way, that way to make it profitable. Yeah, he's strained. He's harried, right? But no, when you please Krishna, all that harried goes away, and you feel very, very happy, right, and peaceful, right, and prosperous, without all that anxiety, right? Just like now, when one devotee was telling me, well, next week we're going to hear about the 10,000 people at Meta that are going to be laid off. He said, Everybody is in anxiety. Everybody. I mean, it has about 65,000 workers. So 10,000 of them are going to lose their jobs in a couple of days. So everybody is worried. They're harried. They're in anxiety. See, that's the material world. The material world works on the principle of anxiety. Just like every day, if you read the news, you'll be in anxiety. I mean, the news is horrible now. You know, this thing, that thing, you know. And every day there's murders going on and shootings and then the war in Ukraine and this thing and that thing. The Chinese are going to invade Taiwan and there's going to be war between the United States and China. This is crazy. I mean, it's just all anxiety. Right? So, why? Because nobody is Krishna conscious, especially the leaders. They're the worst. None of them are Krishna conscious. That's why they're misleading and just causing all this anxiety for people. Nobody wants war. War is horrible. It's the most horrible thing in the world. Look what's happening in Ukraine. Look what happened in World War II. 55, 60 million people died in World War II. Right? World War I also was devastating. So, yeah, war is not some, but you know, people, they get so crazy they want to have the war. Just like Ukraine wanted to have the war. Then Russia wanted to have the war. But what happens? Look at all the people that die. You know, lives are ruined. Families are brokenhearted. Okay, so the prosperity world depends not on our own efforts, but on the background arrangement of the Supreme Lord directly carried out by the demigods. This is the higher technology. Okay, go ahead.
Therefore, the yajnas are directly aimed at the particular demigods mentioned in the Vedas. Indirectly, it is the practice of Krishna consciousness.
So why does it say indirectly the worship of the demigods, the practice of Krishna consciousness? Why does it say that? Because the demigods are not the real recipients of the yajna. They simply accept the yajna and offer it to Krishna. So it's offered to Krishna but with incomplete knowledge. When you worship the demigod, whatever you're offering, it's being done with incomplete knowledge. Because you don't, I mean, if you go to one of these mundane yajna temples, and they're doing Shiva yajna, and you say, well, actually, this is going to go to Krishna eventually. They would argue it, no. Say, so they don't have an idea about how things work. Okay, go ahead.
Indirectly, it is the practice of Krishna consciousness, because when one masters the performance of yajnas, one is sure to become Krishna conscious. But if by performing yajnas, one does not become Krishna conscious, such principles are counted as only moral codes. One should not, therefore, limit his progress only to the points of material codes, but should
moral codes, not material.
Moral codes, but should transcend them to attain Krishna consciousness.
So a moral code, that means you're following mundane morality. Now the whole Bhagavad Gita is about transcendental morality. So what's the difference between mundane morality and transcendental morality? Well, mundane morality was Arjuna saying, well, look, I don't want to fight because then I have to kill some of my relatives and I won't be happy, because usually when you win a battle, you want to show it off to your relatives. But here my relatives are on both sides, so how can I be happy? Either one side or the other side gets killed. So it's all selfish calculation. He's only talking about his own happiness. He's not thinking about making Krishna happy. So that's a type of mundane morality. Just like let's say, if the Ukrainians win the war, they're going to celebrate big time, right? Break out the wine, the whiskey, everything, the meat, and dancing and singing Ukrainian songs and things like that. Or if the Russians win, they're going to do that too, and the Ukrainians will be crying, right? So you see, that's mundane morality. You know, oh well, our country, you know, we won the war, and we defeated the enemy, and you know, we're really machos. So it's all mundane. Transcendental morality is pleasing Krishna. That's the higher morality. So we see that was the dilemma for Arjuna. He was attached to mundane morality. And the arguments he gave, let's just read one or two of his arguments, because his arguments were very, seemed to be very substantive. Look that word up, substantive. He says, I do not see how any good can come from killing my own kinsman in this battle, nor can I, my dear Krishna, desire any subsequent victory, kingdom, or happiness. Now, that's a real, intelligent sounding statement. Okay, what's substantive mean?
1. Having a firm basis in reality and therefore important meaning or considerable. And 2 is having a separate and independent existence.
Right, so Arjuna is making statements that seem to be very substantive, having value, right? So, chapter 1, text 31, he's saying, I do not see how any good can come from killing my own kinsman in this battle, nor can I, my dear Krishna, desire any subsequent victory, kingdom, or happiness. So he looks like he's not greedy. He has no desire to be a controller. It sounds like he's a very moral person. But all of that is defeated by the statement, my own kinsman. That means that he's attached to the bodies of people rather than the soul. Why is he so concerned about my kinsman? Because he has a bodily conception of life. See? So as soon as we say, these are my people, just like, Black Lives Matter. What? All lives matter. No. Black Lives Matter. So that was exactly the same thing as the Nazis. They said, well, white, blue-eyed, Germanic stock matters, right? So as soon as you identify physically with a certain group of people, and you say that they have more value than others, that's called racism. It's not actually a good thing. It just creates more problems in the future, because then other people become racist also. Okay. So in the purport to first chapter, 31st verse, let's read that for a second.
Without knowing that one's self-interest is in Vishnu or Krishna, conditioned souls are attracted by bodily relationships, hoping to be happy in such situations.
Hoping. That means very, very tenuous. That's another word, good word, tenuous, T-E-N. Look that up, tenuous. You see, English has so many words. Very interesting. What's tenuous mean?
Very weak or slight.
There you go. So, without knowing that one's self-interest is in Vishnu or Krishna, conditioned souls are attracted by bodily relationships, hoping to be happy in such situations. Very tenuous. That's a very weak hope. Okay, go ahead.
In such a blind conception of life, they forget even the causes of material happiness. Arjuna happens to even have forgotten. Arjuna appears to have even forgotten the moral codes for a Kshatriya.
So, in other words, he's violating his dharma. He's a Kshatriya. Just like, let's say, you're at home and a dacoit or a bad person comes into your house and is choking your wife. So immediately you call the police and they come right away. And the policeman said, "What's the matter?" He says, "There's a man in the bedroom choking my wife. Please go in there and save her life." I said, "Okay." So he takes his gun out, walks into the room, and then he walks out again and puts the gun back. And the husband says, "So what happened?" He said, "Well, yeah, you're right. Your wife's being choked." Yeah. He said, "Well, what did you do?" He said, "Well, I can't do anything." "Why not?" He said, "The guy choking your wife, that's my brother. And when my mother died, I promised that I would never hurt my brother. So I have to go out and get another policeman to come to take care of him." He said, "What? By the time you do that, my wife would be dead." He said, "Well, I'm sorry, I can't do anything." Now, is that acceptable? He's a policeman, right? What's the difference that it's your brother? You have to protect people. That's what that's your oath of the service that you're doing. Right? So you see, this bodily conception of life is a dangerous thing because it can make a person not do their duty in life. Although they're trained, the policeman is trained to protect the public, but because of this weakness of the bodily conception of life and cousins or brothers or relatives, they're sort of as you call in English they say they're not able to perform their duty. So that is a violation of good faith, because people should have faith that if a policeman comes, he's going to protect them. Right? Now he violated it because of his attachment to his family. Okay, so go ahead.
It is said that two kinds of men, namely the Kshatriya, who dies directly in front of the battlefield under Krishna's personal orders, and the person in the renounced order of life, who is absolutely devoted to spiritual culture, are eligible to enter into the sun globe, which is so powerful and dazzling.
In other words, if you are a Kshatriya and you die bravely fighting on a battlefield, it's not that, you get a wound in your back and you die. No, you never turn your back. You always face the enemy and you fight as best you can, and you die, then it's glorious. In the same way, a sannyasi who never breaks his vow of chastity, who is always functioning on a spiritual level, he'll also be liberated, as well as the Kshatriya who dies bravely on the battlefield. And even the Sudra who does his duty honestly and renders service, he also attains perfection. And also the Vaishya, who does his duty properly in the Varnashram system, he also attains liberation from the cycle of birth and death, because they all work cooperatively together and follow their dharma, their occupational duty, correctly. Go ahead.
Arjuna is reluctant even to kill his enemies, let alone his relatives. He thinks that by killing his kinsmen, there would be no happiness in his life.
So there's no consideration of Krishna now. He's only thinking about his own happiness. Go ahead.
And therefore, he's not willing to fight. Just as a person who does not feel hunger is inclined to cook. Is not inclined to cook. He has now decided to go into the forest and live a secluded life in frustration. But as a Kshatriya, he requires a kingdom for his subsistence.
Subsistence, yes, I'm sorry.
because the Kshatriyas cannot engage themselves in any other occupation. But Arjuna has no kingdom. Arjuna's sole opportunity for gaining a kingdom lies in fighting with his cousins and brothers, in reclaiming the kingdom inherited from his father, which he does not like to do. Therefore, he considers himself fit to go to the forest to live a secluded life of frustration.
So that's not being a Kshatriya, that's being a coward. So that was the problem with Gandhi. He was actually a coward. So, whereas Jinnah was not a coward. And he could see through Gandhi. He knew what his weaknesses were. That's why he prevailed over Gandhi and separated Pakistan and Bangladesh from India. Because Gandhi was wishy-washy. He was not a real, what you would call a real brahmana or a real renunciate, and he was not a real politician. He was somewhere in the middle, some type of wishy-washy person. So politics never succeed without violence. He was advocating nonviolence, right? And then a sannyasi never has any relationship with women. Sometimes Gandhi would sleep with women, maybe not have any connection, but just to prove that he was detached. I mean, no sannyasi does that, right? And he would sometimes walk down the street with his arms around a woman. Although he's dressed like a sannyasi. So, he was wishy-washy. He wasn't really neither a pandit nor was he a kshatriya. Therefore, he made a mess of the whole situation. And although he's advocating nonviolence, he's murdered. And the same thing with Martin Luther King, who followed Gandhi. He was also murdered, although he's advocating nonviolence. Because both of them used nonviolence as a political, political strategy. Whereas Lord Chaitanya engaged in nonviolence not for any political reason, simply to help people come to a higher level of spiritual life. So there's a difference between using nonviolence as a political tool or a strategy and using nonviolence to help elevate people to a higher state of... Just like Buddha, he engaged in nonviolence. He said that ahimsa paramo dharma, that nonviolence is the highest principle of dharma. But he didn't have a political agenda. So he succeeded. Lord Chaitanya also succeeded because he didn't have a political agenda. So all these things have to be understood. Otherwise, we get confused about what is right and what is wrong. Okay, so let's come back and then finish we're reading number 9. Did you finish that?
Maharaj, we are in 15.10.
Oh, 10. Okay, finish reading it. Oh,
Persons who are everlastingly fooled by lust and desire lose all power to understand their change of body and their stay in a particular body. They cannot comprehend it. Those who have developed spiritual knowledge, however, can see that the spirit is different from the body and is changing its body and enjoying it in different ways. A person is in such knowledge can understand how the conditioned living entity is suffering in this material existence. Therefore, those who are highly developed in Krishna consciousness try their best to give this knowledge to the people in general, for their conditional life is very much troublesome. They should come out of it and be Krishna conscious and liberate themselves to transfer to the spiritual world.
Okay, so if you can understand why you or others are suffering in the material world, then you become knowledgeable. You become intelligent. Because then you'll try and stop the cause of that suffering. If you don't, I'll give you an example. One time, I had in Paris, I had a customer who was a street vendor, so I used to go and deliver him some of my products. But he was a very difficult person to talk to because he was always, he was out in the street all the time. He had his setup of all his products in the street. And he was always looking at women, right? So when I'd go to give him some merchandise, his head was always turned. He'd be talking to me, but his head was always turned toward the sidewalk to see the women walking by. So one day I said to him, I said, Mr. Levy, I said, if I took off my underwear, would you wear it? He said, no. I said, why not? He said, oh, that's dirty. I said, if one of these women took off their underwear, would you wear it? He said, yes. I said, but isn't underwear dirty? He said, no, not that. I said, he was crazy, right? All day long, he'd be meditating on women walking by on the street. So, and just to test his craziness, I asked him, you know, if I gave you my underwear to wear, would you wear it? He said, no, that's dirty. I said, well, how about one of those ladies, if they take off their underwear, would you wear it? He said, yes, that's clean. This is how crazy people are, you see. So, in the same way here, you can see that a person in such knowledge can understand how the conditioned living entity is suffering in this material existence. Therefore, those who are highly developed in Krishna consciousness try their best to give this knowledge to the people in general, for their conditional life. For their conditional life is very much troublesome. They should come out of it and be Krishna conscious and liberate themselves to transfer to the spiritual world. So this is what our mission is, to help people become liberated from the misery of this selfish material life and go back to Godhead. Okay, we'll stop right there. Are there any questions? Okay, no questions. Haribol, glories to Prabhupada, ki jai. So who wants to sing? Anybody?
Hare Krishna.
Go ahead.
Shri Guru Chaitanya Padma Kevala Bhakati Sadma
Shri Guru Charana Kevala Bhakati Sadma
Shri Guru Chaitanya Padma Kevala Bhakati Sadma
Shri Guru Charana Padma Kevala Bhakti Sadma
Bando Muhi Savadana Mate
Bando Nui Savadana Mate
Bando Muhi Savadana Jahara prasade vai e bhavatori jai.
Janara prasade vai e bhavatoriya jai.
Krishna prapti hoy jaha hoite.
Krishna prapti hoya hoite.
Krishna prapti hoy jaha hoite.
Krishna prapti hoya hoite.
Guru mukha padma vakya chitete kori kya.
Guru Mukha Padma Vaikya Chitete Goriya Aikya.
Arana kori ho mane asha.
Arana Goriya Mane Asa.
Arana kori ho mane asha.
Arana Goriya Mane Asa.
Shri Guru charane rati aise utama gati.
Shri Guru Charane Rati Ese Utama Gati.
Je prasade pure sarva asha.
De Prasade Pure Sarva Asa.
Je prasade pure sarva asha.
De Prasade Pure Sarva Asa.
चक्षुदान दिलो जय जन्मे जन्मे प्रभु से.
चक्षुदान दिल जे जन्मे जन्मे प्रभु से.
दिव्य ज्ञान हृदय प्रकाशित.
दिव्य ज्ञान हृदय प्रकाशित.
दिव्य ज्ञान हृदय प्रकाशित.
दिव्य ज्ञान हृदय प्रकाशित.
प्रेम भक्ति जहाँ होते अविद्या विनाश जाते.
प्रेम भक्ति चाहते विद्या विनाश जाते.
प्रेम भक्ति जहाँ होते अविद्या विनाश जाते.
प्रेम भक्ति चाहते विद्या विनाश जाते.
वेद गाय जहाँ रचरित.
वेद गाय जनर चरित.
श्री गुरु करुणा सिंधु आदम जनार बंधु.
श्री गुरु करुणा सिंधु आदन जनर बंधु.
लोके नाथ लोके राजीवाना.
लोके नाथ लोके राजीवाना.
लोके नाथ लोके राजीवाना.
लोके नाथ लोके राजीवाना.
हा हा प्रभु करो दय देह मोरे पाद छाया.
प्रभु कोर दया देह मोरे पाद छाया.
हा प्रभु करो दया देह मोरे पाद छाया.
प्रभु कोर दया देह मोरे पाद छाया.
ए बेजा सुश्रुति भुवाना.
हे बेया सुशुति भुवाना.
प्रभु पाद पतित पवाना. Krishna Prastaya Bhutale Shrimati Bhakti Vedanta Swami Niti Namine
Krishna Prastaya Bhutale Shrimate Bhakti Vedanta Swami Niti Namini
Namaste Saraswati Deve Gauravani Pracharine Nirvisesha Shunyavadi Pasyatyadesatarine
Namaste Saraswati Deve Gauravani Pracharine Nirvisesha Sunyavadi Pasyatya Desatarine
Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda
Nityananda
Shri Advaita Gadadara Shivasadi Gaura Bhakta Vrinda
Jaya Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadara Shivasari Gaura Bhakta Vrinda
Shri Krishna Chaitanya
Chaitanya
Prabhu Nityananda
Nityananda
Shri Advaita Gadadara Shivasadi Gaura Bhakta Vrinda
Jaya Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadara Shivasari Gaura Bhakta Vrinda
Hare Krishna Hare Krishna
Hare Bo
Krishna Krishna Hare Hare
Hare Hare
Hare Rama Hare Rama 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 Hare Hare
Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama Hare Rama 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 Hare Hare
Hare Krishna Hare Krishna 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 Hare Hare
Hare Hare
Hare Rama Hare Rama 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 Hare Hare
Hare Krishna Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama Hare Rama Rama
Rama Hare Hare Jaya Prabhupada Jaya Prabhupada Jaya Prabhupada Jaya Prabhupada
Jaya Prabhupada Jaya Prabhupada Jaya Prabhupada Jaya Prabhupada
Jaya Guru Deva Jaya Guru Deva Jaya Guru Deva Jaya Guru Deva
Jaya Guru Deva Jaya Guru Deva Jaya Guru Deva Jaya Guru Deva
Nitya Gaura Hari Bo Hari Bo Hari Bo Nitya Gaura Hari Bo
Nitai Gaura Hari Bo Hari Bo I bow down to the lotus feet with great awe and reverence. By His grace, one can cross the ocean of material suffering and obtain the mercy of Krishna. I only wish to have my consciousness purified by the words emanating from His lotus mouth. Attachment to His lotus feet is perfection and fulfills all desires. He opens my darkened eyes and fills my heart with transcendental knowledge. He is my Lord, birth after birth. From Him, ecstatic prema. By Him, ignorance is destroyed. Our spiritual master is the ocean of mercy, the friend of the poor, and Lord and master of devotees. O Master, be merciful unto us. Give us the shade of your lotus feet. Your fame is spread throughout all the three worlds. We take shelter of your lotus feet. Srila Prabhupada ki jai. So that verse I was looking for is the 3rd chapter, verse number 12. In charge of the various necessities of life, the demigods, being satisfied by the performance of yajna or sacrifice, will supply all necessities to you. But he who enjoys such gifts without offering them to the demigods in return is certainly a thief. Haribol.